I'll most likely never look at children's places or pizzerias the same way ever again after this whole mess. It happened on a Friday evening when one of my close friends sent me a text about a new place I'd opened earlier that week. From what I saw, it appeared to be a type of pizzeria. The article in the screenshot my friend sent showed a picture of a blue robotic bear wearing a top hat and glasses. He even had an old-fashioned clock right on the center of his chest. The article said his name was Gears, and that he had opened a type of pizzeria called the PinionPlex, where kids would go for family fun and also be introduced to the land of the old. I didn't know what it meant, but I was curious and agreed to go. Around an hour later, I pulled up into the parking lot in my car as 3 of my friends followed me in their pickup truck. Looking at the place, I noticed that it was decorated with shiny gears, as well as steam engines and other parts. A large illuminated sign above the entrance spelled out the PinionPlex, each word made of screws, bolts, gears, and other things. The 4 of us got excited as this place looked like it was much cooler than we could have imagined. We walked around the front doors and were greeted by cheerful music playing and kids laughing. There were teenagers too, so it most likely was a place for all ages rather than just kids. There were arcade games scattered around, and the walls were decorated with complex steampunk-looking things. Then I noticed the stage. The large stage that sat right towards the center back wall. Standing there were animatronic performers, all being multicolored animals holding instruments and microphones. I was genuinely impressed by how smooth their movements were, almost seeming lifelike. They all had clocks on their chests, much like gears, but each one was different from the other. Now I saw what the article meant by the land of the old. It was a steampunk-themed place, centering around clocks and steam-powered machinery. My friends and I decided to explore the place, all while avoiding our feet getting stomped on by little kids having fun. I found a room called the Clockwork Cove and looked inside. Everything was pirate-themed, yet had steamships instead of the traditional pirate ships. A small stage was set in the corner of the room, the curtains decorated with gears of different designs. They were parted open a bit, which was enough to get a closer look to see if there was anything behind them. Another animatronic animal stood there, a feminine fox, colored pink and purple, having gold ring piercings on her ears and a sharp metal hook in place of her left hand. She had a clock on her chest, much like the others. I noticed a wooden plaque on the bottom of the stage just under where she stood. Captain Brenda. I chuckled to myself at the idea of a female fox being a pirate captain of a steamship, sailing the 7 seas. Looking back up at her, I noticed something was off. Brenda's one teal-colored eye was suddenly looking at me. I could have sworn she was just staring blankly ahead a second ago. I stared back up at her, goosebumps forming on my arms. She just sat there, making eye contact with me. I don't know. Maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me. I shrugged it off and walked out of the room and into another. I didn't see the sign to it, but the room was decorated with neon lights. There was another stage, slightly smaller than the one in the main room, but 3 more clock animatronics stood there. One was a purple wolf, the other 2 being a blue bear and a light blue chicken. They all wore shoulder pads and had bizarre designs on their bodies. They kind of looked a bit like 1980s glam rock stars. I noticed the bear looked familiar. He had the same top hat and glasses as Gears from the article, and his colors were similar. Perhaps he was just a glam rock version of him. I took a step back to admire all 3 of them, only to feel a chill run down my spine as I saw their eyes were locked onto mine. I stumbled back a bit out of shock, starting to freak out. The wolf started turning her head to face me, the faint sound of clicking gears and whirring servos coming out of her neck. I quickly walked out of the room. Now I'm sure that my mind wasn't playing any tricks, and that these things could make eye contact with others. But why would they all just stare at me, and me only? My friends caught up with me and told me that the place would close soon and that families started leaving. I thought it was a good idea and said I was ready to go. But as soon as we walked to the exit, my stomach suddenly decided at the last minute that I had to go to the bathroom. I told my friends they could go without me and that I'd call them after I got home. They went with it and walked out to their truck. I quickly went to the bathroom as employees started leaving, a few others staying behind. I sat in the stall to do my business, but had complications with it. You know that feeling you get when you have to go, but then nothing happens after a little while? That's basically what happened. It took me longer to finish up than I thought, but as soon as I was done, I washed my hands and walked to the bathroom door. I opened it to find a shocking sight that made my stomach drop. All of the lights were off, with only a few night lights illuminating the now dark building. I walked out to the main room, calling for an employee. Nobody replied. I saw the exit doors, the setting sun only casting a bit of light from the rectangular windows on both doors. Walking up to them, I tried to push them open. They were locked. My heart started beating faster and faster, with the realization now sinking into my mind. I was locked in, trapped inside until the place opened tomorrow. My first instinct was to call my parents or the police, but as I pulled my phone out, I saw that there were no bars. What? How would the service suddenly not work? Did it also shut off when the place was closed? I started to panic, not knowing what to do. I would be trapped in there for a whole night by myself. Unless, maybe there was a security guard on duty. I once again called if there was anyone there, hoping to get a response. But yet again, no answer. I pulled my phone back out and switched on the flashlight, shining it around the place. It was dead silent, the only sounds being the ticking of clocks coming from the stage. That's when I remembered. The animatronics. I pointed the light at the stage, illuminating the tall, multicolored mechanical animals. There were around 6 of them on the stage. There was a green and cyan cat, a yellow and pink bunny, a blue fox, another fox that was purple and orange, a brown and orange bear, but the 6th one caught my attention. It didn't even resemble an animal. It was blue all over, with a rectangular body. An opening on its body revealed its complex gear mechanisms and a swinging pendulum, a small clock on the center of the chest and small blue doors by the right shoulder. It had black eyes with white pupils, and a large alarm clock for a head. Its mouth was forming a slight smile, not showing any teeth. It was actually pretty cool looking, but I still had a mixed feeling of panic knowing I was still locked inside. I pointed my flashlight down the hall and started nervously walking in that direction in hope to find a landline phone somewhere. It was dark and eerily quiet. I started calming down when I saw a faint light through an open door. Poking my head through, I saw it was a small office. A desk sat on the side of the room between 2 swinging doors and a large window on the front. The light was coming from a lamp sitting on the desk, accompanied by 2 monitors. A chair sat next to the desk, facing towards the door I stood at. Just then, I heard a sound from the hallway coming from the direction towards the main party room. They were slow and even thumps, almost resembling footsteps. A wave of relief washed over me, thinking it was the night security guard. I turned around and pointed the light towards the sound. The beam didn't catch who it was right away, but then the footsteps stopped. I walked a bit closer until my light caught the figure. Only, it wasn't a person at all. It was one of the animatronics, the purple and orange fox. I let out a small gasp in shock, and felt my heart skip a beat. The fox just stood there, not moving an inch. I walked closer until I was inches away, and got a good look at the fox. It was feminine, made up of body panels that looked like they could be easily opened. The clock on her chest was inside a panel that looked almost like a heart. Her paws were large, with metallic claws sticking out of the toes and fingers. I even saw she had 2 tails, a rather odd design choice. Her mouth was partially open, revealing canine-like teeth, glistening a bit in the light. Weirdly enough, she didn't look creepy at all. She actually looked kinda cute. I waved my hand in front of her face, expecting her to react, but she didn't move. I was confused, because if it wasn't her, then whose footsteps did I hear? I flinched just a bit when one of the fox's ears suddenly twitched, making a soft clicking sound. Her eyes focused and made contact with mine. The hairs on my back stood up as I took a step backwards, pointing my phone light at the thing. Just then, she opened her mouth a little more, It made a sound resembling a high-pitched giggle. It wasn't like the friendly giggle of a child. It was more like the sinister cackle of a witch, but with the pitch changed to that almost of a chipmunk. I felt my blood turn to ice, petrified with fear as my mouth hung open. The fox raised one of her legs up with a mechanical ratchet sound and took a step closer to me. I immediately spun around and dashed for the office. I pushed on one of the doors to close it, but something was blocking it off. The footsteps slowly got closer and closer until it was a few feet from the door. I spotted a lever on the wall right next to the door frame. I slammed my hand on it and heard the whine of a motor as the door swung closed. The footsteps stopped at the door and I heard pounding. I stood with my back against the wall, waiting for it to stop. After about 2 minutes it did, and now there was silence. I didn't want to open the door in fear of seeing the fox still there on the other side, but then I noticed the large window above the desk. It was too dark to see, so I searched for a possible light switch. I found the one next to the light for the office. As soon as I flicked the switch, I saw the silhouette of the fox standing on the other side, peeking into the office. I jumped back a bit and let out a small gasp. Now I was getting even more freaked out. How could these things move on their own? Why are they moving? Might they think I'm an intruder? I turned off the light and took a minute to calm down. I may be trapped inside overnight, but now I saw this office as my only protection from the possible dangers that lurk within the place. Just as I finished that thought, I heard a second pair of footsteps coming from the opposite door, still left open. I didn't bother to look at who or what it was, so I immediately pulled the lever and the door swung shut. I sat in the chair and looked at a clock on the wall. It was past midnight. I didn't know when the place would be open tomorrow, but I had no choice but to wait since my phone couldn't work without any service. My heart leapt in excitement when I saw a phone on the desk. It was one of those early 2000s style landline phones, but I was about desperate to call for help. I picked up the receiver and dialed the number for my parents first. The phone rang, but nobody picked up. I set the receiver in the phone cradle to try again, but when I put it up to my ear, all I got was garbled static. I threw the phone back on the cradle again out of both fear and frustration. Now I knew there was no way to call for help. The knocking came back, but this time on both doors. I was stuck in this office, with the only light source from the lamp on the desk. All I could do was just sit and wait, because I feared the worst if I opened the doors. I looked around for anything I could use as a weapon, but didn't find much. I eventually decided to turn on the monitors out of curiosity to see what they'd do, and multiple screens appeared on both monitors. Each one was a security camera, located in almost every part of the building. The first one that caught my eye was the camera to the main stage, showing the last 5 animatronics still standing there. Wait, there were still 5. Then who could have caused the banging on the other door? I looked at the camera for the Glamrock place. All 3 of them were still there. But when I got to the camera for the gift shop, I gasped. A large box sat in the corner of the room, and the lid was open. What is that? What could have been inside? I looked through more and more and stopped when I saw the camera to the Clockwork Cove. The curtains were fully open, and Brenda was standing on the stage, her hook in the air and staring at the camera. I gulped, fearing that she would come after me next. But I felt less afraid, knowing I had 2 doors blocking off whoever could get me. Still, knowing I was locked inside this place until morning was unsettling. I laid back in the chair and tried to think happy thoughts on escaping. As a few minutes dragged on, the chair started to feel more comfortable and I was feeling drowsy. I felt myself relax and my head leaned backwards until everything faded to black. I awoke still in the office, but in pitch blackness. The lamp seemed to have gone out. I turned the switch to click it on, but it didn't work. I didn't know how much I slept, so I pulled out my phone to look at the time. 12:15. What? How was I asleep for only a few seconds? The monitors were still on, but I saw that literally every single animatronic was missing. I didn't know what to think, until I turned to my right at the door, now wide open. An animatronic stood on the other side in the darkness. The first thing I saw were its eyes, glowing red and resembling viper eyes. It looked just like gears, but some of its body panels were withered, wires and gears dangling out of its body. It was black and red, making it harder to see it in the dark. I scooted the chair back against the closed door on the other side of the room, breathing heavily in fear. Suddenly, the animatronic opened its faceplates, let out a shrill screech, and leapt at me. I quickly sat up in the chair, almost screaming, and clutched my chest. Breathing heavily, I scanned the room. I was still in the office, and both doors were still closed. I sighed heavily in relief to see that it was all just a dream. I glanced up at the clock. 4:15. I was asleep for 4 hours. Even today, I still didn't know how I managed to fall asleep in a situation like that in the first place. I heard a muffled bang, but it wasn't coming from the doors. It was coming from straight above me. I slowly looked up and I saw a vent on the ceiling, large enough to fit a person. Out of panic, I switched to the monitors and quickly looked through the cameras. A chill ran down my spine to see that all of the main animatronics were there, yet they were all looking directly at the camera. Looking into the camera for the Glamrock room, I saw all 3 of them were staring at the camera too. What is going on? Then I remembered. The box from the gift shop. I looked at it and gasped. A tall and lanky animatronic was standing within the box. It had a gray body with red stripes, a cyan-colored face with blue cheeks, and black eyes with white pupils. A small clock was on its chest, and it wore a green top hat. I shuddered a bit at how creepy it looked, and quickly looked at the Clockwork Cove camera. My eyes widened at the horrific sight. The curtains were still open, but Brenda was nowhere in sight. She was gone. The vent suddenly clanged open and the cover fell to the floor, almost landing on me. I jumped back and looked at the now open vent, to see a single teal eye staring back at me. My first instinct was to throw one of the door levers up and dash out of the office. I ran down the hallway, not minding if there was anything standing on the other side. I got halfway through the corridor when I suddenly slipped and fell on my back. Pain exploded through my body as I let out a small groan, trying not to make myself heard. I looked down at the puddle I slipped in and felt it with one finger. I took a sniff. It smelled odd and had a weird color to it. Kinda greenish. I figured it must have been some sort of oil or lubricant for machinery. The puddle was forming from under the crack of a door, most likely the maintenance room or something. I struggled to get on my feet through the pain my back was feeling. The rapid sounds of approaching footsteps came from the direction of the office. I knew it was Brenda trying to find me, so I quickly scanned my dark surroundings. I couldn't go through the one door or else I'd slip in the oil again. I settled for the door across from me and quickly yanked it open as quietly as I could. I shut the door as the footsteps kept getting closer. They stopped near the door. I held my breath, trying to be as quiet as possible. After about a minute, I felt like I was going to pass out before the footsteps finally continued onward. I released my breath and gasped for air. I took out my phone and switched the light on. I was in what looked like a tool closet. I looked at each tool to see what would make the best weapon. I settled for a large wrench within a toolbox. Gripping it tightly, I quietly snuck out of the closet and down the hallway. Once I made it to the main hallway, I pointed my phone light at the stage just in case. My stomach dropped to my feet when I saw the stage was empty. Every single animatronic that was once there was now gone. Just then I felt something tap my shoulder. I turned around to see the same purple and orange fox standing right behind me. Her mouth opened as she spoke the words,
"Leaving so soon?"
She still had that same high-pitched voice. I swung the wrench at her, but she grabbed it out of my hand. Using both paws, she bent it like it was made of putty. Now I knew these things weren't anything to mess with. I sprinted to the door and tried to open it again, but the lock restrained it from moving. Multiple footsteps approached from behind me. I took a look over my shoulder to see that all of the animatronics were slowly walking towards me. I slammed into the door, hoping to break it open. After a third hit, the door busted open and I tried to run out, but something grabbed my shoulder. The figure spun me around to reveal Brenda, her face forming a crazed and evil smile. She raised her hook in the air and was preparing to slice at my face. My body entered fight or flight mode immediately, and my first reaction was to kick hard at her knee. There was a loud snap as her knee bent backwards from the force and she fell down, releasing my shoulder. I took the opportunity to sprint down the parking lot to my car. I could hear the animatronics yelling and running as I jumped into my car and started the engine. I shifted into drive and floored it. The engine screamed and the tires billowed smoke as the car skidded out of the parking lot and onto the road. Once I felt I was far away enough, I called the police and then my parents. They scolded me for not being home, but after I explained what happened, they sounded worried sick. Once the police arrived at the PinionPlex, everything was back in place. No oil spills, no missing vent covers, no broken animatronics. I still gave a report, but I could tell the cops thought I was crazy. I can't blame them, since I couldn't believe all of this myself. It's been a few weeks now. The PinionPlex is still open, but I never went back there again. Even my 3 best friends stopped going after I told them what happened that one night. I told other friends too, but just like the cops, they thought I was crazy. I seem to be the only one who knows what kind of evil lurks within that place. But even today, there's still one thing I could never completely understand. That nightmare I had in the office, the red clockwork bear resembling Gears. Who was he? Why did I dream about him? He wasn't even any of the mascots of the place. I got the feeling he's related to Gears somehow, or at least associated with him in a way. I'm not one who's really superstitious, but whoever he is, I got a feeling that he's the one who was behind everything that happened that night.